The question I'm going to ask today, Dad, Papa, is...
The question that we're going to talk about is...
What is the most scared I've ever been? That one leapt off the page for me.
What was my first big trip?
How was the day of your wedding?
I'm going to talk about how I almost died twice in 2 years.
She was telling me her life story, and she didn't know it was me.
That is an absolutely true story.
And I can tell you about it.
Welcome to the Storyworth Podcast. I'm your host, Krista Baum, co-founder of Storyworth. We help people write their life stories, the big stories and the small ones. Each week on the Storyworth Podcast, we ask questions that help us hold on to a person's life story and get to know our loved ones better. This week on the show, a story of a man who walked right up to the edge of death, a man who faced a terminal diagnosis, attended his own funeral, and wrestled with what it means to say goodbye.
Hi, I'm Curtis Atkinson. I'm living in New York, in the same town where I met my wife, Nettie, about 25 years ago.
And I'm Nettie Atkinson. I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, and we have 3 children. What I always say about Curtis is he's a hidden treasure, because the more you dig, the better it gets. I know some people feel like once they get married, oh, geez, I'm finding out all the stuff I didn't really happy about. But Curtis, it's like, oh, gosh, I didn't know you were that cool. I didn't know you did that. Wow, you're that? Yeah, I mean, I think like I almost thought about writing a book called Love is Taking the Bananas Out of Your Smoothie, because Curtis will do things like, let me just try to explain this. So I don't want to have bananas in my smoothie, but we were living in England and a lot of the strawberries would come with bananas. So I would wake up in the morning to make my smoothie and Curtis had already taken all the frozen bananas out. So I'm just saying little things like that, just thoughtful little things that he's always doing for all of us.
Storyworth is a way of preserving stories and history between loved ones. So what story are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about how I almost died twice in 2 years.
Can you give us a sense of what your life was like in 2022 before all of this gets started?
We were just coming out of COVID. We were living in London, making a move into the Cotswolds, moving to the countryside and looking forward to exploring the Cotswolds in Western England.
And what was your first sign that something wasn't quite right?
So I had stage 2 cancer. It was just a mole on my forearm that turned into cancer, and I had that surgically removed. So I've always gone for these mole checks and gone to the dermatologist on a regular basis. Just by happenstance, we were doing some scans, and on that scan, we picked up that I had this, exploding lymph node. They did a preliminary biopsy, and it came back cancerous. And at the same time, they did another set of scans where they scanned more broadly through my body, and they discovered that I had a tumor in my brain and a tumor in my liver, besides this swollen lymph node. And they said, the surgeon just said, "You're not getting surgery. Here's your, cancer oncologist, and he's going to talk to you about immunotherapy." I also had something called gamma knife, which is a X-ray or gamma ray that they put into your brain. They fire from all these different positions. And so I did that for the tumor in my brain. And after 6 months, after I'd been through treatment and I was getting off the steroids, I started having really bad headaches. Really bad headaches. It was just the worst headache I had ever had, times 10.
Curtis will never complain. That's the thing. So I knew he was in miserable pain because he was talking about it. Like he'll never talk about his pain. He was talking about it. So he wasn't even able to really function and think.
I called my doctor several times in the hospital. And they're like, "Oh, I don't know." And so I said, "Guys, something's got to be going on here. What's going on?" And so I finally got in, and I came in on a Friday and got these scans done. And then they asked me to come back in on the Monday to get the results. And the doctor just came in and was bothered and said, hey, we looked at the scans and we think you have another condition which is terminal, which is leptomeningeal disease. It says cancer that you get after you have another cancer, and it always kills you.
Oh, boy.
And they say people who get leptomeningeal disease can die between 2 to 6 weeks. And that's what they said that I had. And they said the one chance I had was that I could take this medication, and the medication would prolong my life. It wouldn't cure me because the medication has trouble getting across the blood-brain barrier. The good chances, I could live as long as a year. And they said they don't know anybody that, makes it to 2 years. So, as you can imagine, I was pretty floored by that. All of a sudden you're in slow motion, and like everything you've been thinking and all of your plans, dreams, all of that is just suddenly changes gears. It's really unusual. It's sort of like a vertigo car, car suddenly stopping, a real visceral sort of feeling. It was a bit of a surprise. It was really tough, breaking the news to my wife, who was traveling, by the way.
Yeah, so I was in Italy with a friend. We had a friend visiting from Mexico. So I kept texting him. I'm like, what did the doctor say? What did the doctor say? What did the doctor say? And he kept ignoring me. So I started getting a little bit suspicious. So we were in Rome. We were supposed to go to Florence the next day. And he called me and he told me, he said, hey, I have about 2 to 11 months to live.
That for me, that was almost harder than the realization for myself what was happening.
And then, the next discussion was like, how do we tell our kids?
How old are your kids at this point?
A 20-year-old, 18-year-old, and a 12-year-old.
Okay. Yeah. So you really did have kids who were just launching.
Mm-hmm.
How did you break the news that it was terminal to your kids?
I don't know if I did a good job at that. I told them the reality, and we were honest with them. Some people like to protect their kids from the truth, and we've never taken that approach ever. And so we were honest with them, and here's what they've said, and here's what's going on, and that was it. I don't know.
What was your number one priority with the time you had left?
I mean, it was time with each other, but the reality is when somebody's dying, it takes so much work.
I've never been so busy dying. It was just this massive amount of things. I wanted to make sure my family was provided for.
It's just the incessant amount of paperwork.
All of our trust and will stuff was U.S. based, but we were living in the U.K., so I had a bunch of legal stuff that I had to do. I needed to go through all of our investments and insurance and make sure that was, up to date. Was I really covered by my works insurance, life insurance, like I thought?
It was like our daughter dropped out of university, so I was trying to get the tuition refunded.
Does, Nettie have access to all of the billing? I typically pay a lot of the bills.
Like, we depend on him so much. It was like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And then there was panic. So it was like, we're living in another country on the visa with him. And people kept saying, where are you going to go? And I kept saying, I don't know, because the only place that feels like home is wherever Curtis is. What would we do without him? I can't imagine life without him.
Did you guys feel like you guys were having a joint experience or two parallel experiences?
No, different. Just very different experiences, yeah.
Yeah. You were so focused on taking care of us. Mm-hmm. And then I was so focused on just wanting time and emotional time. Mm-hmm. There was some tension with that. Like, there was moments I was mad at you for like, you're dying and we're doing paperwork. But for you, your focus has always been like, I've got to take care of my family. And for me, I was like, but I want you to just sit here with me, right?
I just felt this incredible weight to get everything together.
So I just started photographing him. So I was like, oh yeah, he holds his hand like that when he sits down and listens to our kids. Oh, he does that, how he laughs. Like, I was just trying to get those expressions, and that's what I ended up doing.
And then we started to think about, well, if this is it, like, when do I want to say goodbye to the rest of my family who's living all back in the United States?
I said, Curtis, your body's going to be with us longer than your brain is. So we need to go and see your friends and family while you can still comprehend and listen to what they're saying.
And that's when we had this plan that, hey, I think I'd like to have my own funeral service, and I'd like to attend myself. We called it a celebration of life.
We had 2 events in Utah and 2 events in San Francisco to say goodbye. When we got to Utah, he had been taking the cancer medicine to help with his leptomeningeal disease, and he was sick. He didn't feel good. He was like laying down all the time.
I still am running a fever, and I'm just tired. And so I'm like, spend the first week just sleeping in bed, taking this medication while things are getting ready. And then for the headaches, I found the only thing that was really helping was caffeine. And so I'm basically lying flat for a week and taking caffeine.
Well, tell me a little bit more about like this. How do you plan your own funeral? Like, what were the essential elements for you? Like, what did you want it to feel like?
Seeing everyone again and express my thanks and appreciation and love, to those, and let them express their love to me as well, and say goodbye and be there and feel my family being, supported by friends.
I met Curtis when we were freshmen at BYU.
Hi, I am Henry, and he's my amazing uncle.
Curtis, you've been a great brother. Appreciate that. And I always want to listen to things you have to say.
In California, we go ride our bikes around in the bamboo forests and in the avocado orchards and climb the trees.
Whenever I meet somebody that knows Curtis, I kind of discover again how great he is.
And he's given us such a good life, you guys, right? So we love you. Thanks, everybody.
Getting choked up.
I think there's something about going home to your hometown to remember all these people that have just always been there. Then after that, we went to Hawaii because we had both had a goal to see a cacao farm together.
Like, hey, while I'm still alive and kicking, let's go together as a family to take one last trip. And I was getting choked up again, but one last trip together.
I mean, I do remember Curtis. We were swimming in the ocean, and I remember he was sitting on the rocks watching us all. He was watching our kids get tumbled by the waves. And I kept thinking back about that. Like, what was that like for him to be watching and thinking, okay, this is some of the last times.
Around in this time, we started to get some strange calls from my doctors. the doctors were saying, oh, there might be another explanation for the illness that you're having. So when they had started and given me the news immediately and started me taking my medicine really quickly, what they skipped from the Friday to Monday is that every Thursday they have an interdisciplinary meeting where they go over the cancer plans. And so they skipped that and told me about my illness before going through that process. And in that later process that I wasn't attending or wasn't a part of, but that happened at the hospital, some radiologists brought up the fact that this might not be leptomeningeal disease, but it might be what's called low brain pressure, and could be the result of not having enough spinal fluid in the brain. And so the doctor, while we're in Hawaii, said, "Hey, we're going to check it out. This could be what's going on." And so that was actually pretty good news.
I mean, yes, there's hope here.
Right?
Yeah.
We're cautiously optimistic as we left Hawaii and came back. And when I met with the neurologist, obviously I was very anxious to have that meeting. And she said, "I got to tell you, Curtis, you just the way that you walked in here and just seeing you," she's like, if you have had leptomeningeal disease for 4 months, you're not walking in here and you're not, we're not having this conversation. That's just not how it goes. Like, she says, like, I'll go through all your charts and everything, but I don't think you have it. I think you have this low brain pressure. And the interesting thing was just hearing, she said, "Oh, it's really interesting. What you're telling me is that because of the cancer medication, you lay flat on your back for a week and you were drinking caffeine. Turns out that's the exact first line treatment for low brain pressure. Lying flat for a week and drinking caffeine." And she said, "You don't have headaches anymore, do you?" I go, "No, they're totally gone." And she's like, "Yeah."
Oh my gosh.
And so I unwittingly had cured myself by having the cancer treatment. I'd unwittingly cured myself of the actual disease that I had. And then sometime around the same time, I'm back in England, and I get a call from the hospice worker who's preparing me to, spend my final. This was in the morning, and they were very nice and called me and let's, work on my final moments. And then later that afternoon is when I got the call from the doctor saying that we've changed our most likely diagnosis to be low brain pressure.
How are you even emotionally keeping up with this? Like in the 1 p.m. in the morning, you wake up and somebody's like, "I'm here to prepare you to die." Oh. And then a couple hours later, you're getting a call from a specialist saying like, "You know what? I don't think you're dying at all." Yeah. Like, how are you emotionally even, are you just kind of divorced from this emotionally at this point? Because how can somebody keep on this roller coaster?
Yeah, no, that's the word we used, was roller coaster. It was a roller coaster.
Did it send us on a total wild goose chase? Yes, it did. Was it painful? Yes, it was. Did we spend a lot of money? Yes, we did. But what it did is it really did show us how many wonderful people we've had in our life. Curtis got to listen to what he's meant to people in his life. We got to reflect on our life together. Our children got to reflect on their father, what he means to them. I don't know, in some ways it seems like a gift. It was such a relief. We just wanted to spend our time doing things that made us happy.
So this was maybe like April-ish. We talked together like, "Hey, I'm still alive. We need to take advantage of our life together. And we don't know when we're going to get the rug pulled out from under us again. So let's do what we wanted to do and let's travel." We were like, "Let's go. I've never been to the south of France. Let's go, live in Nice for several weeks," which we did. And then for my birthday in May, we went to Copenhagen, where I'd been before, but always loved and wanted to have my family experience that. And then we went to chocolate festival in Germany later in the summer, and we were in Prague. And gosh, I think we went a bunch of other places too that I can't remember. And finally, we did Christmas in Marrakesh in Morocco. So that whole year, I was like, let's go.
How are you living now differently?
For me, that sort of attitude of let's make sure to do the things that we've always wanted to do. I'm still very much in that mode. Like, I don't want to waste time.
I definitely value my time with Curtis. And I definitely think I notice sort of more of the magical moments, or appreciate the small things. I mean, just the fact that you can just sit and watch a movie together. Like Saturday, we went and walked around Central Park together, just held hands and just enjoyed the fall afternoon together. Went and had lunch together, just simple stuff. I think our focus was we were going to do the business of life, have celebration of life, and then enjoy life. And what the great news was, the happy ending of the story, is that we got to enjoy life with Curtis.
That's it for this episode of the Storyworth Podcast. I'm Krista Baum. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to get started writing your own book of life stories, or want to give the gift of Storyworth to a loved one, head over to storyworth.com. And if you want one of your stories to be considered for the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us at storyworth.com/podcast. The Storyworth Podcast was produced by the folks at Good Weight Productions. Remember, everyone has a story worth sharing. See you soon.